Hello everyone, welcome back. Today we are going to learn about snake bites. Now, before we move on to know more, let's just begin with the first word, that is ophiology. Ophiology means the study of snake. Now, what do we learn in this lecture? We learn about poisonous snake versus non-poisonous snakes and how to identify them. Why at all do we need to learn about snake bites? What is snake bite? And everything about snake bite and snake bite management. Okay, so coming straight to the topic. Are all snakes and snake bites poisonous? No. 70% of the snakes are non venomous and 30% are venomous. Out of this 30%, 15% is dry bite. For example, cobra. Most commonly, it's cobra because cobra has got a control mechanism. And the remaining 15%, they do uh, envenomation. And the most common one to do that is the saw-scaled viper. So we should keep this in mind every time, and whenever a patient comes with snake bite, the first thing that we need to do is reassure the patient that not all snakes are poisonous. 70% of the snakes are non-venomous, 30% venomous. Out of this 30%, 15% they cause dry bite, and only the remaining 15% will cause envenomation, which is also known as opitoxemia. Now let us learn about the features of the poisonous snake and non-poisonous snake and how to differentiate between both. So first of all, head scales. Remember that the poisonous snakes, they have smaller head scales. Exceptions are there. Just look into this figure. This is the figure of cobra, where we can see this is the first, second, and this is the third. So cobra has got the third supralabial scale, which is the largest. Rest of the scales, they're small. So we have to know that at all the poisonous snakes, they have smaller scales except for cobra, who has the third supralabial scale will be largest. This is the picture of cobra, where we can see that the third supralabial scale is the largest. Another example is crate, which has got the fourth infralabial scale, which is the largest. Now, which is the fourth infralabial scale? As you can see in this image, this is the picture of crate. Important feature about crate is that it has got central hexagonal scales in the middle of the back. So if we find a picture of these hexagonal scales, as you can see, these are certain hexagonal scales. So we should know that we are talking about crate. And here we can see that this is the first, second, third, and the fourth infralabial scale. So it is the fourth infralabial scale, which is the largest in crate. Okay. Next, the non-poisonous snakes are larger. So if we talk about the head scales, the poisonous snakes have the smaller head scales, whereas the non-poisonous snakes have the larger head scales. Then talking about the belly scales. If you look into this picture, this is the picture of the poisonous snakes. You can see that the scales, these are the belly scales, which are covering the entire breadth of the belly, and they are quite large. Whereas for the non-poisonous snakes, this belly scales, they are small. These are the small belly scales. They can also be moderately large belly scales, but they are not going to cover the entire breadth of the belly, as we see in case of the poisonous snakes. So in poisonous snakes, the belly scales are very large. They cover the entire breadth of the belly, whereas the non-poisonous snakes, they are smaller, as you can see in this picture. Smaller scales than the non-poisonous snakes, and the larger scales which are covering the whole breadth is poisonous snakes. Next, we come to the tail. They've got the compressed tails. They have got the round and not compressed tails. The scales which are present distal to the anal plate, they have a single row, and here they will, in the poisonous snakes, they have, yeah. So if we talk about the poisonous snakes, they have the single row of the scales which are present distal to the anal plate. This is the anal plate, and you can see that the scales which are present distal to the anal plate, they are present in a single row. Whereas if you talk about the non-poisonous snakes, then distal to the anal plate, the scales are arranged in double row. Okay. So why at all are we learning the features between the poisonous snakes and non-poisonous snakes? Because when the patient comes to us, we have to distinguish whether he has been bitten by a poisonous snake or a non-poisonous snake, he or she. So next we move on so that the administration of the medicine gets easier for us. The treatment management, it all depends upon that, no? Yes, so habitat for the poisonous snakes, it is nocturnal, and for the diurnal, for the non-poisonous snakes. Fangs, they have got hollow fangs and hollow long fangs are present. Like it's long and it is hollow. Okay, then it's looking like a hypodermic needle. But for the non-poisonous snakes, it is short and it is solid. Entirely it is solid because it is not containing any venom. Next, we have the bite. Bite is very important because for the poisonous snakes, two fang marks are present, just like this. They don't have any multiple teeth marks. Multiple teeth marks are present for the non-poisonous snakes. As you can see, it is containing approximately like six. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So six teeth marks are present. Whereas for the poisonous snakes, it's always two fang marks are present. The head of the poisonous snakes, they're triangular shaped with the body narrower than the head, whereas it is round shaped and the head and the body will blend with the head. Round shaped head is present and the body is going to blend with the head for the non-poisonous snakes. Let us look at this picture where the venomous snake. Venomous snake, you can see that it has got a triangular head, whereas the non-venomous snake, it has got a rounded head. The head is blending with that of the body, whereas for the venomous snake, there is a slight constriction here. Okay, very important for viper. Viper is a venomous snake and it has got a vertical cat eye like pupil. We'll see it. But for the non-poisonous snake, it's got most commonly they have got a round pupil. These are the fangs, as you can see. Hollow foldable fangs for venom delivery. But here they have got the small solid teeth for gripping the prey. So this is for the non-poisonous snakes. As I told you, the tail. Long tapering tail and the short blunt tail. Okay. Now, we next move on to why is learning about snake bite important? I have taken the the reference from the government website. Okay, so what it says is that as per WHO data, WHO, the global snakebite incidences stand around 5.4 million, with about 1.8 to 2.7 million accounting to snake envenoming annually, resulting in approximately 8,000 to 1.3 lakh deaths. So you can see that the amount of snake bite incidents globally is so high. The amount of death due to snake bite poisoning is so high that WHO has now listed snakebite envenoming as a priority neglected tropical disease in 2017 and advocates developing a global strategy to halve the number of snakebite induced death and disability by 2030. This point is very important. That is priority neglected tropical disease in 2017 has been in this list by WHO. Snake bite envenoming has been included in the year 2017. Okay. Now, why learning about snake bite poisoning is important in India? Because you see, in India, approximately 50,000 fatalities result from an estimated 3 to 4 million snake bites each year, representing approximately half of all the global snake bite related deaths. And only so you can see that what is the amount of burden in India. And another important point that only a small proportion of snake bite victims across the country report to clinics and hospitals, and the actual burden of the snake bite is grossly underreported. So it's the snake bite poisoning is actually a big burden in our country. So that is why our government has come up with this plan, National Action Plan for the Prevention and Control of Snake Bite Envenoming, NAPC. This is important that you know the full form of NAPC, which is National Action Plan for the Prevention and Control of Snake Bite Envenoming. Now, what is the goal of this one? It is a strategic approach to halve the death and the disabilities due to snake bite envenoming by 2030. And this is an initiative by the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. Okay, so this is a small picture, the image which is again taken from the same website where it is showing the global number of snake envenoming per year. Okay. Now the next question is, why are the snakes at all poisonous? Because the snakes, they contain the venomous gland. This venom gland, where is it placed and what is it? It is a modified salivary gland. It is, where is it present? As you can see that it is present below and behind the eyes, and one is present on the either side of the head. Suppose these are the two eyes, one present here, one present here. So they are present on the either side of the head, but they are present in the above the upper jaw. It is made up of the ducts which will carry the venom from the venom gland to the fangs, as you can see. So these are the two fangs. So if we talk about the poisonous apparatus, then note that it is made up of the venom gland, the ducts which are arising from the venom gland to supply the venom to the fangs, and it is also containing the compressor muscle which is going to compress the gland and pour the venom into the through the duct into the fangs. Okay, now next point, that is 90% of the venom they're proteinaceous enzymes. Means what are the enzymes, what is the venom actually made up of? 90% of this venom, it is made up of proteinaceous enzymes. It is made up of hydrolysis, hyaluronidases, cholinesterase, serine proteases, phospholipase A2. Hyaluronidase causes the local tissue destruction. As you can see, it causes local tissue destruction. Cholinesterase cause the cholinesterase enzyme. It is neurotoxic, just like the acetylcholinesterase. Acetylcholinesterase, what it does? It breaks the acetylcholine, due to which the acetylcholine is less. What is the function of acetylcholine? To cause the smooth muscle contraction. Acetylcholine causes the smooth muscle, sorry, not the smooth muscle, but it causes the contraction of the muscles. That that plate, the nicotinic plate is present. So contraction of the muscles is due to the acetylcholine. So if there is no acetylcholine because of the cholinesterase enzyme, then what will happen? There will be relaxation or paralysis of the muscles. So that is why the paralysis nature, it is because of the cholinesterase enzymes which are present. Local tissue destruction, it is because of the hyaluronidase. Then the hemolysis is due to the serine proteases. And we also have the phospholipase A2 or the lecithinase, which is myotoxic, cardiotoxic, neurotoxic, causes the vascular permeability. It increases the vascular permeability, due to which there will be edema. Next, we talk about the families of snake: Elapidae, Viperidae, and the Hydrophidae. The Elapidae family of snake, whenever we are going to talk about the family of snake, we need to know that there are three main families: Elapidae, Viperidae, and the Hydrophidae. V for V. Whenever I talk about Viperidae, I am talking about a vasculotoxic poison. I am talking about all the vipers. So Viperidae family belong to Russell's. To this family belongs the Russell viper, saw-tailed viper, and the hump-nosed viper, and it produces the V for V, that is vasculotoxic venom. What it causes is DIC, that is disseminated intravascular coagulation. Then we have the Elapidae. Elapidae is the neurotoxic. It contains the neurotoxic venom, and it includes king cobra, common cobra, krait. It causes the neuromuscular paralysis. Then we have the Hydrophidae, where the sea snakes are included in this thing. The venom of the Hydrophidae, they are myotoxic. They cause the muscle pain, necrosis, rhabdomyolysis, and renal failure. We'll talk more about the snakes. Okay, more about this. But what we need to remember, very important, is the big four of India. That is the spectacled cobra, which is also known as our very own common cobra, the common krait, Russell's viper, saw-scaled viper. So these are the big four of India, and all the anti-snake venom poison, the polyvalent anti-snake venom poison, which is polyvalent anti-snake venom, the medicine, that serum that we have for combating this poisonous snake envenomy. It is applicable against the big four of India, which is the spectacled cobra, common krait, saw-scaled viper, Russell's viper. Okay, basically there is no Hydrophidae family included here. It's just the Elapidae and Viperidae. Then you see that there are two types of cobra, as we have already discussed. There is the king cobra. This is the king cobra, and this is the common cobra, also known as Naja Naja. How do you differentiate between both of them? Remember that it is the common cobra or Naja Naja against whom the PSAV is prepared. How does the Naja look? Naja, the common cobra. You can see that it is containing the spectacle or the bilaceral mark, which is absent in case of the king cobra. This is important. Then you see that the pupil of the cobra, it is rounded. It is important because you'll see the next snake where the pupil is vertical. What is the fatal dose? Fatal dose is important that it is 12 mg. Next, what is the special feature of the cobra bite? It is that the local reaction is going to start within 6 to 8 minutes and the local reaction is minimum, and it shows the neurological features because we already described that it is belonging to the Elapidae family where it shows the neurotoxic signs are present, right? It causes the paralysis is there, neuromuscular problems are present here. So this is how you will remember that how does a cobra look? It will always form a hood, the sign which we show as I told you. And the common cobra is the one which is having the spectacle or the bilaceral mark, and it is also having a rounded pupil. And it is against this common cobra only that we have the snake polyvalent anti-snake venom. Okay, the next snake that we move on to, it is the krait. Now this krait is very important and it is very dangerous. Why? Because it is a because when it bites nocturnally and it creates a painless bite. When the person is sleeping, what it does is that it is going to bite that person but without causing any pain. So the victim is going to wake up paralyzed or can also die in sleep. That is why this krait is very dangerous. How does it look? Let's see. As you can see that the glossy black body with milky white bands. You can see that it is so glossy, right? It is so glossy. It is bearing the hexagonal vertebral scales which I have already discussed before. And you can see that it is containing milky white bands in between, prominent over the posterior and faint or absent over the forebody. So it is mainly present in the posterior posterior part of the body, and it is containing the small dark eyes. But you see that here one thing is it is contrary to the normal characteristics where I told you that the head should be constricted, means the diameter means like the head should be, that neck should be a little bent. It is the head should not blend with the body, but here you see that the head is almost equal to the neck in girth. So you should remember how does a krait look and why is it important, because the it produces the painless nocturnal bite. Fatal dose is 6 mg and the clinical features is similar to that of cobra, but remember that it is less rapid. Okay. Next, we move on to the very important snake that is, and you know, krait is also belonging to the Elapidae family. So, because the krait is also belonging to the Elapidae family, so it will also show the neuromuscular paralysis. So, we have read about the common cobra, king cobra, and krait. Now, we move on to the next category, which is the Viperidae. So, let's move on. You can see here that is the this is the picture of the Russell's viper. How do you identify 3 rows of diamond-shaped scales? Do you see this? You see that the scales are diamond in shape and it is containing 3 rows of diamond-shaped scales. But the saw-scaled viper, it is containing angulated scales. You can see here, see it is containing angulated scales. See here, it is containing angulated scales. But here there is a distinct diamond-shaped scales are present. But you see angulations. These are the angulations. So this is the picture of the saw-scaled viper and this is the picture of the russet viper. 3 rows of diamond-shaped scales. And this is the third one, which is the hump-nosed viper. So it is important that you can at least distinguish between all the snakes. Yeah, see, we've got an excellent picture here. Vertical slit-like pupil. This is V for viper, V for vertical slit-like, V for vasculotoxic. So V for viper, V for vasculotoxic venom is produced, and V for vertical slit-like pupil. This is a very good picture, right? Now, what are the special features here? It produces, this is very important, that it produces extensive local reaction where there will be pain, oozing, swelling, blisters will be present, and the local necrosis will give way to gangrene. This is important, that there will be local necrosis, gangrene. We'll see the pictures soon again. It is more extensive local reaction. This always needs to be kept in mind whenever we will see the picture of, okay, let me show you only. Right. So this is the picture. This is the amount of necrosis. This is the amount of necrosis, the blisters, and this is the blister. As you can see, that it is so edematous. So, and it is hugely, it is like extensive reaction, extensive local reaction is present. Okay. Next, we also see that there will be regional lymphadenopathy, and if there is regional lymphadenopathy, it is an indication for starting the PASV, that is the anti-snake venom. This is the picture of the sea snake, and this is the picture of python. Remember that python is a non-poisonous snake, okay? And the cause of death for this snake, for python snake, it is the traumatic asphyxia. It is going to wind around your neck, okay, your throat, causing the traumatic asphyxia. So this is how we have learned about the python. We have learned about sea snake. We learned about viper. Important thing to know is the three names, the three different types of vipers. That it is containing vertical slit-like pupil. It is producing extensive local reaction, blisters, necrosis, regional lymphadenopathy. Then we learned about crate, where the more important thing about crate is that it produces a painless nocturnal bite due to which the victims will wake up paralyzed and will die in sleep. It contains the hexagonal vertebral scales. Another thing is the cobra, the commonly viewed, the commonly seen snake is the cobra. Next, we talk about the fate of the venom. The venom, when it is orally consumed, because we learned that the 90% of the venom is made up of proteinaceous enzymes. So when it is consumed orally, it will be digested. So that is why if you eat the venom, there will be no effect until and unless there are GI ulcers. But if it is injected via the lymphatics, it is going to cause the ophitoxemia, which is the envenomation. Remember that it doesn't pass through blood, but it spreads through lymphatics. Next, what are the signs and symptoms? The most cause of death is fright, because it is this fright which is going to result in which is going to result in death. So signs and symptoms means fright, anxiety, chest pain, palpitation. So whenever a patient comes with a snake bite, you will see that these are the common symptoms. Obviously, when the patient saw that he has been bitten by a snake, obviously he'll become very scared. So these are some important things that we need to keep in mind. The maximum local symptoms, as I told you, it will be caused due to viper. Okay, minimum or no local signs will be caused by crate. And whenever you see painful progressive swelling, we should always start the anti-snake venom. Okay, now signs and the symptoms of the neurotoxic snake, that is Elapide. It is going to do the neuromuscular paralysis. So let's start with ptosis. Let's start with the eyes. Very important sign, that is bilateral ptosis. Most common and most important sign. Whenever you see a patient with bilateral ptosis, we always have to rule out snake bite poisoning. Then we have diplopia. Now we come on to the throat, the neck, the larynx. So dysphonia, dysphagia, inability to eat. Dysarthria. Dysarthria means there is a, you can see here, I've kept a picture also so that it becomes easier for you. It is caused by the weak or uncoordinated muscle needed for speaking clearly. It affects how the lips, tongue, voice, and breathing work together to form the words. So if there is a problem in any of these things, there will be difficulty in speaking. That is only known as dysarthria. Then we have the stridor, the sound which is produced. Then descending paralysis, and finally death due to respiratory muscle paralysis. So there will be ptosis, while that is drooping of the eyes. Diplopia, okay, double vision, which you say. Dysphonia, that is this, the sound produced will not be proper, okay. Dysphagia, unable to speak properly. Dysphagia means unable to eat properly. No, it is difficulty in eating. Dysarthria means difficulty in speaking. Stridor, descending paralysis. So in these cases, we have to treat the anti-snake venom and mechanical ventilation if there is respiratory muscle paralysis. So let's just look at the mechanism of the action of the venom. It is going to block the release of the acetylcholine, or it is going to block the action of the acetylcholine receptor. Like it can be presynaptic or it can be postsynaptic, resulting in flaccid paralysis, right? So we have to do the single breath count test. Just a second. This is the single breath count test. where what happens is that we have to count the numbers, where we have to tell the patient that you count the number. He has to take a single breath, like he need to inspire, then he needs to, in that single breath, he is going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, and then he has to repeat after every 15 minutes for 2 hours. And if it decreases, that means he is having the respiratory failure. Next, the signs and the symptoms of vasculotoxic venom. What are the local signs? Vasculotoxic means viper, and we know that it will produce extensive local reaction. There will be pain, swelling, blister, gangrene, necrosis, regional lymphadenopathy. What will be the systemic signs? And because it is vasculotoxic, so it is going to produce. Let us look at the mechanism of the action first of all. It causes the endothelial damage, because if the endothelial cells are damaged, the blood vessels will become leaky, there will be bleeding and edema, there will be oozing out of the oozing out of through the capillaries, right, due to which there will be bleeding and edema. Then there will be the activation of the coagulation pathway, but there is a, you know, disordered activation of the coagulation. Right. Initially, there will be widespread clotting. Then there will be consumption of the clotting factors because of so much of clotting. So due to which there will be DIC, that is disseminated intravascular coagulation. Then we have hemolysis. So it causes this venom is going to cause the hemolysis, that is destruction of the RBCs. Next, so due to all these things, you can understand that there will be immense amount of bleeding, abdominal pain. Why? Because of the retroperitoneal bleed. So what will be the complication from DIC to shock to renal failure? So we have to treat with ASV, the surgical debridement we need to do because of the local reactions, and also fresh frozen plasma needs to be given to this patient. We have to do the 20 minutes WBCT. Yes. So what happens in this 20 minutes WBCT is that the patient's blood is collected. Then for after 20 minutes, we see that whether it is the clotting is whether it is blood is clotting is or not. If it is clotting, if clotting is present, then you know that that it is normal, okay, because it should clot. But if the clotting is absent after 20 minutes, it means that this is a vasculotoxic venom, right? So this is nothing but the 20 minutes WBCT test. Then what are the signs and the symptoms of myotoxic venom? There will be local pain and swelling. This is the local reaction. Muscle necrosis will be the first symptom. Due to the necrosis of the muscle, the myoglobin will be released, due to which the raised myoglobin in blood, which is known as the myoglobinemia, raised myoglobin in the urine, myoglobinuria, and then there will be renal failure. Right, so this is all about the signs and the symptoms of the different venom of the snake bite. Most commonly, and let me just recapitulate all the anxiety related fright, anxiety, chest pain, palpitation. Now, if it is the neurotoxic snake, then there will be ptosis, all the paralysis, as you can see, ptosis, diplopia, dysphagia, dysphonia, dysarthria, stridor, descending paralysis, respiratory muscle paralysis. For the neurotoxic venom, we have to do the single breath count test. We know the mechanism of the action of the venom. Then the signs and the symptoms of vasculotoxic venom, but their local reaction will be extensive. There will be systemic like bleeding of the retroperitoneal bleeding will be there, complications at DIC, shock. And here we have also described about the mechanism of the action of the vasculotoxic venom. Then the treatment, it's the same, but you just need to do the surgical debridement of the local reactions. Important here is again the WBCT, 20 minutes WBCT, which needs to be repeated after every 6 hours. Then we talked about the myotoxic venom, which causes the muscle necrosis, myoglobinuria, and renal failure, right? Move on to the snake bite management. How do we manage snake bite? We have to follow this right approach. As I told you, we need to reassure the patient about 70%, 30%, the story I already told you. Then we need to immobilize the patient. Remember that we need to stop the spread of the venom. So in order to do that, we have to occlude the lymphatics. And how do we occlude the lymphatics? Because I already told you that, remember that it is through the lymphatics that the venom spreads, and it's not through the blood. So we have this pressure immobilization method, which is known as the Sutherland's wrap. How do we do this? You can see that we are applying this this is the place where the the fang mark is present. So we have to start applying the broad pressure bandage from below upwards over the bite as soon as possible. We do not need to remove the trousers, because in that case it will result in the spreading of the venom. We have to keep the bitten leg still. That is the importance of immobilization. Why are we doing this? We have to keep the leg still. We have to make sure that whenever we are carrying the patient, we don't make the patient walk. We have to the patient needs to carry via motorbike or whatever. He can't just walk. The bandage should be as tight as you would apply to a sprained ankle. Always remember that after applying the bandage, your one finger should pass. Okay, one finger should pass. That should be the at least that much amount of space should be available, that one finger is passing. So shouldn't be so much tight. Then extend the bandage as high as possible, ideally up to the groin. Then we have to apply a splint to the leg, immobilizing the joints on the either side of the bite. You can see that this is the splint which you have applied. Now bind it firmly to as much of the leg as possible. Walking should be restricted, as I already told you. Now if it is happening in the hands, then bites on the hands and the forearm. Bind, we have to apply this, and we have to bind it to the axilla. Use a splint to the elbow, and use a sling. That is what we need to do. That is, we have to use a sling here. Understood that this is about the Sutherland's wrap. This is the way we are, like this one, then this one, then this one. This is, and we are applying a splint. So this is how we are going to immobilize the patient by using this technique, which is known as the Sutherland wrap. Then we have to carry the patient, as I already told you, immediately take him to the hospital, and the patient should tell the signs and symptoms so that the treatment can get started. Okay, no no sucking of the venom, no applying tourniquet. So we have to make sure that we do not apply any tourniquet. We do not apply any sucking. No, nothing should be done, because if that happens, it will it is going to have disastrous consequences can happen. And we also need to keep in mind that whenever suppose a patient comes, okay, he does not know that that tourniquet shouldn't be applied. Now suppose a patient comes to you with the tourniquet applied. What are you going to do? Are you going to immediately remove the tourniquet? No. We can, before starting the polyvalent anti-snake venom, we cannot remove the tourniquet, because if we remove the tourniquet, immediately the venom is going to spread. So that is why we cannot remove the tourniquet before starting the venom. So we have to start the venom first, then we can remove we have to start the anti-snake venom first, only then can we remove the tourniquet. As I told you, because if you remove the tourniquet, immediately the venom is going to pass. So we have to start first of all with the anti-snake venom, then remove the tourniquet slowly. Okay, if at all the patient comes with the tourniquet applied, because we know that not everybody is educated in this matter. So that is the main motive behind learning about snake bite and snake bite management, because you can see the amount of burden of snake bites in our country. Now, how do we administer the polyvalent anti-snake venom? Remember one thing, that because the source of this anti-snake venom is hyperimmune horse serum, so we have to give, there will be this risk of allergies, right? So that is why we have to give it only when the signs and symptoms of snake venom envenomation are present. It is effective against the big four, which we have already discussed, and the dose is 10 vials we need to give IV. Right, and remember one thing, this Sutherland's wrap is not done for viper bite, because it can cause the compartment syndrome. Okay, now how do we apply this one? The dose is 10 vial. You must remember, I haven't written here this, but remember that 1 vial is equal to 10 ml, right? 1 vial of anti-snake venom, 1 vial, it is equal to 10 ml. So if you are applying 10 vials, mean there will be 10 into 10 means 100 ml of the serum, which has to be mixed in 200 to 500 ml of isotonic saline, and then give slow IV. So this is the, treatment mechanism, and this is the dosage. Then we'll give the IV neostigmine and atropine. Okay, but before we give the neostigmine, we have to give the atropine, because we know that why do we need to give the atropine? Because neostigmine has the it will be acting on both the muscarinic receptors and the nicotinic receptors. Okay, but we do not want the muscarinic receptor related symptoms. So that is why we are going to give atropine, which is the muscarinic blocker, so that only the neostigmine can act only on the nicotinic receptors and help in relaxing the so that it overcomes the relax the paralyzed muscles. Okay, so that it overcomes the block of the acetylcholine receptors. So that is why we have to give atropine. What is the dosage of atropine? It is 0.6 mg and the dosage of neostigmine is 1.5 mg. So remember that this is given in only cobra bite treatment. So this is all about the snake bite treat management. That is, whenever these are the common, we have to reassure the patient, we have to follow the right approach. We need to reassure the patient, immobilize the patient, take him to the hospital, and we must make sure that we should always carry the patient and not make him walk. The immobilization method I've also discussed. We have talked about the dosage of the polyvalentine dystigmine, the neostigmine atropine dosage. We have also told about the supportive treatment. Like I said, yeah, like we discussed that PP, FFP for the vascular toxic venom. So this is the thing. Okay, now I just want. So before I end this topic, I have just brought a clinical scenario. So let's look into the question here. It says there's a 30-year-old woodcutter who was brought to the ER. He gives a history of being bitten by a snake. His co-workers killed the snake, brought it along with it. So this is the picture of the snake. Can you identify the snake? Here we have got diamond scales. You can see that there are distinct diamond scales. They're present in 3 rows, 1, 2, and the 3 which is lying below this surface. So very much indicative of Russell's viper. The culprit here is the Russell's viper. Then it says, so what are the other points which are supporting this thing? It says that the dead snake was about 4 feet in length, triangular head, narrow neck, head covered by small scales, vertical pupil, short tapering tail. All of these things, they are indicative of being bit by a poisonous snake. So pupil is vertical, which means it is V for V, as you already told me. V for vertical, V for vascular toxic, and V for viper. So all these things are very much indicative of the fact that this belongs to viper. On an examination, the victim had 2 pinpoint punctured marks. Again, you see it is the same thing. It's a poisonous snake. Okay. Now, blood fluid oozing out from the wound, surrounded by spreading hemorrhagic necrosis zone. So you can see that there is local necrosis here. Blisterings are present here, gangrene, and there is swelling in the food. So it is having a very extensive local reaction. All of which are characteristic of viper bite, because we know that it is the crate and cobra, they have minimum local reaction, but it is the viper only which has got extensive local reaction. So what is the probable cause of death? Vascular toxic, that is why there will be hemorrhagic shock, circulatory failure, and death. Culprit of the snake, we discussed, it is Russell's viper. What important findings do you expect during the autopsy? External findings, it is the same external local reaction like blisters, swelling, necrosis. Okay, then there is the edema. Okay, then hemorrhage, not hemorrhage, but you can see that there is a fluid oozing out from here. This is the difference. For internal findings, we need to write about this congestion in the organs, because vascular permeability increases, so there will be edema and congestion in the organs. Bleeding from stomach, intestine, intramedullary hemorrhage, and cortical necrosis in the kidneys. Petechial hemorrhages and subendocardial hemorrhages. So from everywhere within the body there will be hemorrhages, because you know that there will be DIC here. So this is all about the clinical scenario, and this is all about the snake bite poisoning, how to identify the snake, poisonous, not poisonous snakes, everything. I hope that you have understood everything. So thank you. Thank you for your patient hearing.